Welcome to the video on operators with sessions. So firstly, we'll understand what is a session. Now, as per the official TensorFlow website, a session object encapsulates the environment in which operation objects are executed and tensor objects are evaluated. Okay, so I'll put this thing in simple words. So a session is an environment of a software system that describes how the lines of code should run. Okay, in TensorFlow, a session sets up how the hardware devices such as the CPU and the GPU they talk to each other. Okay, now that way you can design your machine learning algorithm without worrying about micromanaging the hardware that it runs on, right? Now, of course, you can later configure the session to change its behavior without changing the machine learning code at all. Okay. Now, there's an important point that the TensorFlow requires a session to execute an operation and retrieve its calculated value. Okay, so basically, if you want to execute an operation and you don't use sessions, so in that case, you will not be able to see the calculated value that comes out as a result of that operation. Okay, so now this is because a session may hold several resources, like for example, tf.qbase, variable, reader base, and so on. Okay, and yeah, when the job of these resources is done, they should be made free, right? Because they are not required anymore. So for doing this, what you can do is that you can either invoke the tf.session.close method, and so this will help you in manually terminating the session, or what you can do is that you can use the session as a context manager. Okay, so these are the two ways in which you can use sessions, and yeah, we'll be seeing further that how can you use sessions in these two methods, in these two ways. Okay, so yeah, if you want to use the close method, that is if you want to manually close the session, so what you do is that you first declare the session and then you do whatever you want to do in that session, right? And after that, you actually close the session. So you need to manually close the session in this case, right? But if you use it as a context manager, so what you do is that you write this with tf.session as ses, and there is a block which has the scope of this session, right? So all that you write, all the commands, all the statements that you write within the scope, so that will be considered as under that session. And yeah, so you will not have to manually close the session in this case because everything that you write here will be within the scope of the session. Okay. Yeah, so I'll now give you an example so as to clarify it that what I just said, that for getting the values of operators, right, after operations are done on tensors, if you want to retrieve the values, you have to use the sessions, right? So I'll now demonstrate that. Suppose we have this code, import TensorFlow. This is what we have to do because we are using TensorFlow. And then we define a tensor, a constant tensor, okay? And yeah, so then we have this neg(x) equals to tf.-x. So basically this is an operator which will result into a tensor which has all the values negated of this parameter tensor. Okay, so basically this operator takes parameter as this tensor x. So ideally the result of this operator should be a tensor with the values, the elements as -1 and -2. Okay, but we are not using sessions in this case. We just have declared this operator, right? And we are just printing neg(x). So the output that we get in this case is this tensor description. Okay, so basically we have this name of the tensor, the shape is 1, 2, which it should be because the output tensor has to be of the shape 1, 2 only, and it has to be an integer. So yeah, this is fine. But you can see that you are not actually getting to see the tensor that should be given as the output, right? So if you use sessions, you will be able to see the actual tensor values. Okay, so because you're not using sessions, this operator is being declared, but it is not being executed. And that's the reason that you are able to see the definition of this negx, right? The name, the shape, the data type and all, but you are not able to see the exact values of the elements that this negx tensor has. Okay, now we'll just take another example in which we are using sessions. Okay, so we import a TensorFlow as usual. We have defined a tensor, right, by the name mat. This tensor has certain values of the elements, right? Now we are again trying to run this negation operation on this tensor named mat. Okay, so in this case we are actually using a session. So you can see that tf.session as ses, we're using it with width, right? So in this case we are writing within this scope result equals to ses.run negmat. Okay, and then we're printing the result, right? So what we are actually doing is that for this negmat we had actually declared our operator, right, which is the negation operator on the tensor mat, and then within the session we are actually executing this operator, right? Using run, we are actually executing it. The result is in the tensor known as named as result, and then we are printing result, and then we actually get the output to be having the elements which are actually the negative values of the elements present in our original tensor named mat, right? And this was what we wanted. Okay, so in this video we came to know what are sessions and how to use sessions, where they should be used, right? So sessions are important and you should be very mindful while using them, because if you want to retrieve the value that is computed as a result of some operation, you have to use sessions. So you have to be very careful about this.